Who the hell are you?
Who am I? Isn't it obvious? I'm a local businessman!
In principle, Live Alive should be a fantastic game. Multiple short stories that are tied together via a small overarching plot with the 2D HD visuals that Square Enix has pioneered so beautifully. Voice acting adds the cherry to the top of the turn-based mechanics of old, brought fresh into 2022 for a whole new audience to enjoy. That's the theory, right? In practice, Live Alive is a bit of a mixed bag, offering some fun, but also some moments that are faithful to the original experience when it really shouldn't be. Take the ancient China section, for example. Tied to the past, the ideas are interesting, but it just isn't fun to play. A lengthy setup for what ultimately becomes a boss rush ending could be exciting, if not for the fact that the final boss can, and will, one-hit kill you. Even if you explore beforehand and gear up to the best of your ability, you can be put down with one attack. It's archaic, annoying, and a poor design choice that should be left in the past. Telling you to save often because of lost progress is a nice bit of advice, but when it feels like it's there because you can be ruined in seconds through no real fault of your own, I just don't know about that. But then there's the story set in feudal Japan that is more interesting from a story perspective and just generally feels like it has more to offer in every respect. Exploring the enemy stronghold, there's an attempt at stealth on offer, which I admire even if I think it ultimately just makes the game harder through lack of levelling during fights. It has mystery and peculiarities that just make it so much more interesting to actually play through. A more solid levelling curve means you start out weak but end up strong, and it's just a more tried and tested way of developing a character, offering a far more traditional feel. Here, the 2-hour story feels like it's over as it's getting started, whereas the China section makes 2 hours feel like 10. Thankfully, it is more hit than miss overall. For example, the Western section is a complete joy from start to finish. It may be over too soon for my liking, but mechanically it just feels completely different, and while there are a few fights, it's more about strategy and planning. Here you have a time limit to search the town for things that will help, and then you can assign townsfolk to set traps based on their skills. How well you do in that phase results in an easier end boss fight, or one filled with lots of grunt enemies to get through first. It's clever, and importantly, it actually works. At the risk of almost reviewing every game within the game individually, I'll stop short there and say that there's almost definitely something in here for you if you're a fan of turn-based action. Despite the age of the original source material, there's enough clever ideas that flip tried and tested tropes to keep it interesting. For every miss like the ancient China story, there's a major success like the Western one. It's never nice to call things boring, but the China story, and to an extent the far future one, commit that cardinal sin of just not being a huge amount of fun to play. Perhaps it's the order in which I played them, and the mechanics were wearing thin, but it's just simplest to say that your mileage may vary on the stories present here. But it is important to note that Live Alive is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I would just rather urge caution. Each adventure is just a few hours long on average, and this means that the assumed lengthy adventure the visual style and developer itself is known for isn't quite the case here. It also kind of feels like a one and done thing, which you aren't likely to replay over and over. There are reasons to do so, for example, the aforementioned feudal Japan level, which has that stealth option that, again, I'm just not sure is as viable as it is interesting, but it is there and you could play that way. Also, it is worth noting that despite the relatively slight runtime overall, most of the chapters take a fair bit to get going. There's often an exposition dump at the start of every chapter, differing in length, and given that the combat really doesn't vary that much from story to story, it feels as though in a more modern game things would be getting going a bit quicker each time. But perhaps that's unfair because this is just a visually modernised version of a much older title. That said, I still take issue with the loading screens. For a game of this ilk in 2022, I wouldn't expect to be taken out of the action regularly. Instead, every time you move inside or outside, or there's any transition in location at all, even just moving to the next screen, there's a load screen that appears for 2 to 3 seconds. It's perhaps discourteous to complain about this, but given how rapidly the screen appears and disappears, it feels like further optimization was possible, and it is an annoyance, however small it may be. It all looks wonderful, of course. This is a proven art style now for Square Enix, and while most of the voice acting is serviceable, some feels a bit close to being pastiche by mistake, which can sound, shall we say, unfortunate. But this is a love letter to a clever idea that got lost in the West somehow. It's great to see this kind of game getting a second go-around, and while it may not blow the competition out of the water, and while the likes of Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy are simply just better games overall, it's a neat little curio that does warrant a look, and that's why we're giving it a 7 out of 10. thank you very much for watching our Live Alive review. If you enjoyed it, feel free to give us a thumbs up, a like, and maybe even a super thanks if you know what that is, if you're well into the YouTube and all that. We've got a Patreon, patreon.com/godisageek, and of course we are a website, so go to godisageek.com for all the best reviews, features, guides, news, videos, and even some merch links. We do merch. Did you know that? We do merch. And, you know, come join our Discord and our burgeoning community and say hello to all the nice people. Thanks very much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.